There's some fun new Pokemon introduced in the 7th generation, but I guess the million Pokédollar question right now is which ones are the strongest? I mean, we gotta use or go up against them at some point. It's just good to know which ones are the best. Now, we're looking at the entirety of the 7th generation. Not a lot of Pokemon introduced, so making the list is going to be both easy and challenging because now we don't have a lot to choose from. Also, for simplicity of the list, I'm not going to include any legendary Pokemon or Tapus in this list because out of the top 10, it will just be like all Ultra Beasts and Tapus and maybe Toxapex or something like that. So let's go and start off this list. Number 10, we have Delmas. When everyone saw Delmas' design, it's like, oh, this is going to be the next Aegislash. This thing's just going to be a tanky little beast right here. But actually, it turned out to be a little different than that. It wasn't a tanky anchor. It was actually just a frail little Pokemon that manipulates an anchor to go and crush things with a huge attack. So 131 attack on those defensive stats actually turns out to be pretty good, but the Pokemon isn't going to excel as a tank, so it does find some weaknesses right there. And then when we go and like look at potential movesets or ways to run this Pokemon, we just find out that it's all about the damage and having some really unique aspects. That the Steelworker ability combined with Anchor Shot kind of makes it where this Pokemon gets 3 stab, can lock its opponent in, and then still has massive amounts of damage on something like the Power Whip, and then still gets really tanky. So that means we can slap on either a Leftovers or an Assault Vest, and hey, look at that. Delmas actually works out pretty well. It's not like a good, I can bring this in on everything kind of tank because of its Ghost Grass typing, but still strong enough to just compete with a lot of different Pokemon, and that's why it's on the list. Next up, we're going to have Alolan Ninetails. Alolan Ninetails got everything that Ninetails ever wanted, mostly just more than 100 speed. So 109 base speed, that's going to give it a good amount of outspeeds against a lot of Pokemon right now. That means we have an Ice Fairy typing that outspeeds Garchomp. That's like Garchomp's ultimate nightmare. So then when we go and check out Snow Warning, we'd see that it doesn't get a lot of great coverage. I know in the 7th generation, Vanillux recently got it, but Abomasnow is very rarely used. Aurorus has too many weaknesses, and Alolan Ninetales, it has the speed to cover for that 4 times weakness to Steel and some of the other problems that it might have. So yeah, we have a reliable, just snow-setting Pokemon in that Snow Warning that's fast and gets crazy amounts of ice damage. Like, Hail is really good because a lot of powerful Pokemon do not like dealing with that Ice-type hit, and Blizzard gets 100% accuracy. So I have a fast Pokemon that can go and throw that down, and we can just go Choice Specs or something like that and still find insane amount of damage while providing support for the rest of our team, because then we bring in another Ice Pokemon, we can set up Aurora Veil, we can do all kinds of things behind the Alolan Ninetales. So, just getting like a mirror to itself, that this is how Alolan forms were really well done, that we had Drought on Ninetales, which is still pretty usable, but let's make it a little bit more usable with slightly better stats, and then a really awesome ability, so the Ninetales is going to do just fine. Next up, for number 8 on the list, we have Ribombee. I think this Pokemon surprised everyone when we finally got to see its stats, because you look at this guy, and you're thinking, alright, no matter what happens, this Pokemon is getting Quiver Dance, but then a 124 base speed? That outspeeds Greninja. That's awesome. And then we could also look at some other things like 95 special attack. Well, for Quiver Dancers, having a 95 special attack is still really powerful, but this does kind of restrict us, that we do have to run a Focus Sash with it, so that's where some of the power can be gained or lost. But overall, free Quiver Dance Pokemon, high amounts of special attack, and it's also a fairy typing. Now when it comes to using Ribombee, there's a couple of things that you can do right here. So that 124 speed is just so good, and we have just main coverage right here. So we can go dual stab, so Dazzling Gleam into Bug Buzz, and then have the Baton Pass, or we can maybe even try to run that Draining Kiss. Draining Kiss is going to be less damage, but if we're just kind of going for Bug Buzz as a main form of stab, that could still be very powerful. That, okay, we Quiver Dance twice, Draining Kiss most of our health back, and then if they have a special attacker, we're gaining special attack because Quiver Dance is just that broken. Also, we have Baton Pass. So we could run Baton Pass, or we could also go for more coverage. It's like, do you want your Ribombee to sweep? Give it Energy Ball. Do you want it to be like this crazy Baton Pass setup that can also sweep? Then you can go for that Baton Pass, and then now you can give any Pokemon speed, special attack, and special defense, which is a really scary thing to think about. Next up, we're going to be looking at Lycanroc's Midday form. Midday Lycanroc, 112 base speed, that is a really good amount of speed right there, and 115 on the attack, that is a really good amount of attack right there. So Lycanroc's Midday form just unfortunately trumps Midnight's form. I think Midnight looks a lot cooler, but just the way that the stats ended up playing out, that the high speed and the Accelerock is going to kind of be the best thing ever. So we can also see some other things that Lycanroc is going to be capable of. Has that Keen Eye ability. So Keen Eye ability on Lycanroc means that it's just going to make it harder for Pokemon to play evasion around it. Also, you can run Sand Rush, so that's an interesting option. In Sandstorm, you also gain special defense because you are a rock-type Pokemon. But mostly, it's kind of like a frail-ish rock-type Pokemon, which is something you don't see every day, that has a high amount of speed and a solid amount of attack. So it works out really well. I think that the best thing we do is go and compare it to Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl is going to have less attack, but more speed. So it's kind of like Lycanroc will find those surprising amounts of damage, and that just gets Accelerock, which is absolutely broken, usually goes first, and that means we have a priority rock-type move that gets Stab. That's absolutely crazy. Lycanroc, that's why it's on the list. It has just a lot of really good options. Still gets good coverage, Crunch, Fire Fang, into all kinds of other fun stuff. So Lycanroc does just fine. Number 6 on this list, we're going to go into the Comfey. Comfey Triage. Just Triage ability is absolutely bonkers. It's not like a +1 like a Prankster on healing moves. It's a +3 priority to healing moves, and it includes moves like Draining Kiss and Giga Drain. So that means we have +3 Draining Kiss. We can damage a Pokemon that isn't Fake Out at +3 priority, and we also have like insane amounts of sustain while also getting some other things in our moveset. And then Comfey's stats are still pretty solid overall. Like this Pokemon could have fallen flat with like really poor stats, but it's slightly tankier than a Klefki, and it's almost on par with like a Rotom Wash or a Rotom's defensive form or something like that. So it's surprisingly tanky, and then it has 100 base speed, so you can still like outspeed other Pokemon with your setup if they're trying to be tanks or something like that. So the Comfey is just crazy, and I'm thinking like, what happens if you have a skill swap Pokemon that just grabs that Triage and then uses it for itself? Because that's another maybe more powerful Pokemon that can run the Draining Kiss. Maybe something I can run the Giga Drain and just kind of play off of it. Also, Comfey just becomes like this insane healing all over the place kind of Pokemon. Floral Healing in doubles will heal an ally by half, so it's pretty much like a heal pulse at +3 priority, or it will heal to 100% in Grassy Terrain. So if you're running Grassy Terrain set, Floral Healing is way too good, Aromatherapy for the status, and then it also gets access to Leech Seed for singles, so you can just kind of play all kinds of these weird tankiness things that you get your Synthesis before your opponent has a chance to attack, so you're able to gain half of your health if they're not 2-hit KOing you. You're just going to come out on top right there. Leech Seed is going to give you more health. You set up the Calm Mind, you go into the Draining Kiss, and now you're unkillable, and you're just like one of the most absurd priority tank status healing Pokemon sustain ever. Comfey is pretty dang broken. Next up, we're going to be looking at number 5 on the list, and that is going to be the Salazzle. Salazzle surprised me, honestly. That, like, people just started picking it up. It's like, you know what? This Pokemon is really good. The ability to Toxic Poison type Pokemon cannot be understated because it just matches up really good against so many other Pokemon. As a poison typing, it's going to have resist to those attacks, so it just comes in on a tanky Pokemon. It's like, oh, even though I'm super duperly frail, like, that's what I thought. I thought Salazzle was going to be so frail that it wouldn't really matter. I mean, look at those defenses. Those are some, like, the lowest hit points and sweeping defenses possible. And because of that, I thought Salazzle wasn't even going to match up against tanks. No, it can come in on a tank, Toxic, switch out to something else, and now that tank is screwed over for the rest of the game because, oh, poison typings don't plan on getting poison, so that sets up really well. And then also just kind of looking at the other things that Salazzle can do, it can go for that Nasty Plot. So if it has the opportunity to just get a free turn without doubling its already pretty good special attack, like 111 next to a 117, you're outspeeding a lot of things and you're doing surprising amounts of damage. Like Greninja barely has the 100 special attack, but Salazzle is going to get much more out of that, and then it's just going to be running dual stab and poison after that, so it doesn't really matter that's not getting like Protean effectiveness or whatever. But if you Nasty Plot, then that means everything is going to be neutrally KOing, and then we can run into things like, why did it have to get Sludge Wave? Sludge Bomb, 90 base power, Sludge Wave, 95, and then when you're doing all the stab and all the damage boosting from Life Orb and Nasty Plot and stuff, it just becomes a little too much for most Pokemon to handle. You get the Flamethrower, and then you learn that Poison and Fire Stab is just really, really good. A Fairy-type Pokemon can't even damage you because you Quad Resist Fairy, and I think that that's where a main part of this Pokemon's power came in. You Quad Resist Fairy, you force a free Nasty Plot, and then you just Sludge Wave for insane amounts of damage, and if they try to respond with another kind of Pokemon, you can just Flamethrower it, and then you also have Toxic. So Salazzle turned out to be pretty good. A lot of people are using it right now. It's a go-to sweeper, and it's kind of the sweeper special attacker that we've been looking for. not quite like Greninja, but a little more specialized and a little more powerful because of it, so it does pretty well. For number 4 on this list, we have Minior. I just think Minior is really good because it has that shields down ability, so it's fairly tanky inside of its shield, and it can't be statused. So that's why making it a Shell Smash Pokemon is really good. A lot of Shell Smash Pokemon, if they're going up against a tankier Pokemon or the opponent's trying to play status, they can get shut down really easily. Oh, what's that? Will-O-Wisp? Oh, now you're not doing the damage that you were expecting to do. Thunder Wave? Oh, now you don't get to outspeed me off of that speed boost that you just got. So it's kind of easy to shut down. Not for the Minior. And then Minior also has good offenses to back it up. You're doubling a 100 attack for free. You're potentially tripling it if you come in the right situation. Then you have a 120 on speed, so nothing will find you on those outspeeds. Like sometimes if you're playing a really crazy Scarf Pokemon against a slowish Shell Smasher, that can still kind of fall down. Also means even if you get paralyzed after your shield's down, you're still going to be faster than most of the Pokemon out there. So you can make really good use of what Minior is going to be doing right here. And it also means that you can put health investment, you can do all kinds of things. But it's really just all about that Shell Smash. That it's one of the most free Shell Smash in the game, I feel. And this is one of the highest sweeping potential moves in the game. That whenever you're doubling speed, attack, and special attack at the cost of defenses, that doesn't matter. Now you become a sweeper. Now you change yourself into a different playset, and everything else gets one shot in your way. So I think like comparing it to Cloyster is kind of where to go. I mean, Cloyster's only on the 70 base speed and the 95 attack. So we're getting slightly more attack, slightly more stuff like that. I know that with the skill link ability, Cloyster is going to be having higher base powers, and then the damage kind of lines up and stuff. But this guy shows at least where the base stats go, Minior wins when it comes to base stats for a Shell Smashing Pokemon. I think that is a key to its power, because yeah, inside that Shields form, if you're running like a White Herb or something, you can definitely go for 2 Shell Smashes, and then that's at a +4, which is 3 times your attack. Now I don't think it matters how much your opponent is going to try to do against you. You're just going to go and win against them. So Minior is a fun little Pokemon because of it. Next up, we're going to be checking out the Mimikyu. A lot of Mimikyu fans are probably happy that it turned out to be so strong. We saw the data mine. This goes back before like the game was even officially released, and then that guy got a hold of the early copy, and then all this numbers and stats came out, and then we saw Mimikyu. It's like, alright, will this work? It's not insane stats, but it's also not bad stats, and it just kind of relied on how broken the disguise ability would be. Well, the disguise ability is very broken, especially when you play Mimikyu as like a specific tank busting kind of Pokemon. That against a tankier Pokemon, you just bring in the Mimikyu, and they can't deal with it. You find a setup turn, you know, they're trying to boost their own stats, they're trying to do something. Well, that puts Mimikyu in a great position, because it comes in, and then it just wants to go and like max out its hit points. It wants to be as tanky as possible, because this is why it's such a good tank busting Pokemon. That you get a free turn, that you can either get a free in or a free turn of setup. And the worst thing for a Pokemon that's setting up is dealing with a substitute. And Disguise is close enough. So pretty much what's going to happen here is that they have to break the Disguise at some point, so you get a free Swords Dance. So now you're doubling your attack for free, and you're going to outspeed them. So you can either 2-shot them on like a Shadow Claw, maybe even 1-shot them on a Play Rough right there. This gives you freedom to run Adamant Nature to get the most damage out of it. And at that 96 base speed, even uninvested, you're outspeeding a lot of Pokemon. And then it also has the Shadow Sneak, so if something does outspeed it, it doesn't get to do enough damage, because you have 80 on the defense, 105 on special defense with fully invested hit points. You're going to survive something. So that's going to work out really well right there, and then you just like Shadow Claw or Play Rough into a Shadow Sneak, and then the opponent's just going to lose. So Mimikyu doesn't have a lot of counterplay around it, and that's where it turned out to be pretty good. Like, I think it's a really comparable Pokemon to Aegislash, which is really fascinating, because yeah, Aegislash wants to do its own little setup and then go for damage, but Mimikyu sacrifices some of just the raw damage, but gains Play Rough and more speed. Now it can't go for this max like 3 Swords Dance into infinite win like an Aegislash can. Like Aegislash, it'll just one-shot everything off of a +6 Shadow Sneak or something like that, while still being really tanky and having a King Shield. Mimikyu plays a little more frail than that, but in the end, it can still be very effective. So that's something pretty crazy about the Mimikyu. And then next up, we have the Arachnid. It just turned out to be really broken because of that water bubble ability, and also got very surprising stats. Like, you look at this thing, looks like a kind of frail-ish spider, but it's not. That bubble is like made of lead or something, because you have a 132 on the special defense, 92 on defense, and okay hit points. Like 68, not fantastic on tank, but I'd prefer higher defenses overall. It works better with like damage calculation. So you max out the hit points, you invest in defense, and then Arachnid is just going to be really good from there. And then we get into the water bubble ability, which doubles water moves. makes it to where the Pokemon can't be burned, and firepower against it is halved. So you're gaining a free resistance, because Water Bug would normally have a fire neutral hit. So you're gaining a free resistance, you're getting insane amounts of damage on your liquidation, which is already a solid move to begin with. And then you're just carrying from there. So Arachnid has so many different options. Leech Life buff really helped out this Pokemon as well. So now we have forms of sustain. We can even stockpile if we want to get tankier. It's just a tanky Pokemon, like 68 hit points and 132 special defense. You're going to survive a lot of special attacks. You can take down a lot of special attacking Pokemon. That high amount of defense. The defense isn't necessarily high, but investing into it can also be really good. So Arachnid is just a very rewarding Pokemon that does a lot of disgusting things and has surprising amounts of damage. Like Water Bubble, every water type move is going to be super effective. So if you're playing it like that, you run like Adamant Nature, you're maxing out your attack, you can find easy one-hit KOs neutrally, or you can look for like those super effective Leech Lives to pull you back up into a really good amount of health. Arachnid is just, I don't even know what to say. It just sits there and it wins. It just wins, and it doesn't seem like it should. And then for the strongest Pokemon in the 7th generation, I've got to give it to Toxapex. Here's the thing. Game Freak decided to give a Pokemon 152 on defense, 42 on the special defense, and Regenerator. This thing was meant to be, from the start of its design, by design, it was intended to be the strongest Pokemon in the 7th generation, and it gets Recover. So it doesn't even get like Wish. It doesn't have to worry about Sustain. It gets instant Sustain while being one of the tankiest Pokemon ever introduced. And then it also gets Regenerator while being a poison type Pokemon, so it can't be poisoned. And shut up about Salazzle, because you can play around that just by the idea of it. That poison type Pokemon are going to be already like that extra edge of tankiness. And then with the Burn nerf, that effectively buffed Toxapex before it was even a thing, because now it doesn't have to worry about being burned. There's no real status that annoys it too much, because at 35 speed, getting paralyzed isn't the worst thing that could happen. Getting poisoned, like getting Toxic Poison, would be a very difficult thing for this Pokemon, but it doesn't have to worry about that. So then you just go max out the hit points, invest into whatever defense you want, and then you just never ever die. And just in practice, everyone's gonna be running Toxapex. It's almost so good that you have to run it, even though it's just like so disgustingly tanky that it just doesn't feel right running. Gets a new move, protects from moves, contact equals poison. So think King Shield, but poisons the opponent. That's pretty nice. Also gets Stockpile, so that's also gets tankier, and then it just has all kinds of coverage, you know, with the Poison Jab. Poison Jab, 30% chance to poison the target, so you can run that and try to go for the poison, or you can also, you know, just throw down the Skull, try to burn your opponent, and then get a little bit of extra damage. It has too many movesets as well. It can do like 4 different things. It can be just a sustaining set, it can be a toxic set, it can be a merciless set and try to actually get damage, because all attacks are critical hits if the target is poisoned. So you Toxic Poison the opponent, and then you crit every time, so that means they're actually going to go down pretty easily. As this tanky of Pokemon, you shouldn't be allowed to do that much damage. You have the Scald set, you have Toxic set, you just have all kinds of really weird sets, so no one can really predict what the Toxapex is going to do, and then it's also poisoned, so Fairy-type Pokemon can't even respond to it that well. Brutal. So guys, enjoy the video. This is the top 10 strongest Pokemon in Pokemon Sun and Moon. I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.